My father slammed his hand on the dining table, then pointed straight at me. All you ever do is take. You contribute nothing to this family. Everyone fell silent. My mother lowered her eyes. My younger sister looked away. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself, because my father had no idea that if I stopped paying the bills I had secretly covered for the past 3 years, his entire world would fall apart in less than a month. If you enjoy emotional family dramas filled with betrayal, shocking twists, powerful life lessons, and satisfying endings, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Every week, I bring you unforgettable stories that prove the truth always finds its way to the surface. Let me tell you how my own father accused me of being selfish, without realizing I had been quietly holding our family together. My name is Jason Carter. I wish that heaven say that family always appreciates your sacrifices. I wish that had been true. My father, Thomas Carter, had always been a proud man. He believed asking for help was weakness. He also believed that he alone carried this family on his shoulders. I never tried to change his mind, because sometimes the people you love don't need an argument. They need the truth. 5 years earlier, Dad's construction company began losing money. He hid it well, but I noticed the warning signs: late-night phone calls, unpaid invoices, arguments with suppliers, my mother quietly selling her jewelry. I couldn't stand watching them struggle, so I made a decision. Without telling anyone, I started helping. By then, my software company had become surprisingly successful. I worked with clients across Europe and North America. The income was steady, more than enough to live comfortably. Instead of buying luxury cars or expensive vacations, I quietly paid what my family couldn't. The electricity bill, the internet, the property taxes, even Dad's health insurance. Every payment came directly from my account. But I made sure everything looked anonymous. I didn't want praise. I simply wanted my parents to sleep peacefully. For almost 3 years, no one knew, not even Mom. Whenever she thanked Dad for keeping everything together, he proudly smiled. I stayed silent. His happiness mattered more than my recognition. At least, that's what I believed. Then everything changed. My younger sister Emma graduated from college. The whole family gathered for dinner. Everyone laughed, shared old memories. For a moment, it felt like the family I remembered. Then Dad suddenly looked at me. So, when are you finally going to stop wasting money on computers and get a real job? The room became quiet. I smiled politely. My business is doing well, he laughed. Business? You sit in your room staring at screens all day. That's not work. Emma tried to change the subject. Dad. But he wasn't finished. He pointed directly at me. You eat my food. You live under my roof. You use my electricity. And all you ever do is take. Those words hit harder than I expected. Not because they were true, because they were completely false. I slowly looked around the room. The lights above us, the heating keeping the house warm, the internet everyone used every day, even the meals sitting on the table, had all been possible because of payments I had quietly made, yet nobody knew, and suddenly, I wondered if keeping my secret had been a mistake. Mom softly whispered, "Thomas, please," but Dad stood up, his voice grew louder. "I've worked my whole life, and this family survives because of me. If Jason disappeared tomorrow, nothing around here would change." I felt something inside me break. Not anger. Disappointment. Because for years, I had believed one day the truth would naturally come out. Instead, the lie had become everyone's reality. I calmly stood from my chair, looked my father in the eyes, and quietly said, "Maybe you're right." He crossed his arms. "I know I am." I nodded. "Then starting today, you won't have to worry about me taking anything anymore." Without another word, I picked up my jacket, walked out the front door, and made one phone call from my car. It lasted less than 3 minutes. When it ended, every automatic payment connected to my family's home had been canceled. I wasn't trying to punish anyone. I simply decided, if my father truly believed he paid for everything, then he deserved the chance to prove it. The next morning, I woke up in my apartment feeling strangely peaceful. For the first time in years, I wasn't secretly carrying my family's financial burden. I made coffee, opened my laptop, and began my workday. By noon, my phone rang. It was Mom. I answered immediately. "Hi, Mom." Her voice sounded worried. "Jason, the electricity company says our payment failed." I stayed quiet. She continued, "I thought there must have been a mistake." I gently replied, "Maybe Dad should call them." There was a long silence. Then she quietly said, "All right." That evening, another phone call came. This time, it was Dad. The moment I answered, he sounded furious. "Jason, do you know anything about these unpaid bills?" I calmly replied. "No," he scoffed. "Figures." Then he hung up. For years, he never knew those bills existed. Now, he was seeing them for the very first time. Over the next week, the letters kept arriving. Electricity, internet, property taxes, home insurance. Every bill carried the same message: payment overdue. Dad became increasingly stressed. He blamed the bank. He blamed inflation. He even blamed the utility companies. Never once did he imagine that someone else had been paying them all along. One Saturday, Emma came to visit me. She looked exhausted. "Jason, what's going on?" I smiled gently. "What do you mean?" She sat down. "Dad hasn't slept all week. He's constantly yelling. He says bills are appearing out of nowhere." I looked out the window. "They were always there," she frowned. "What?" I stayed silent. I wasn't ready, not yet. A few days later, Dad called a family meeting. Everyone sat around the dining table. The atmosphere felt heavy. Stacks of unopened envelopes covered the table. Dad rubbed his forehead. "I don't understand. I've never had this many bills." Mom quietly replied, "We've always had bills." Dad looked confused. "Then why are they suddenly all overdue?" No one answered. "Because no one knew, except me." He looked around the room. "I'm working harder than ever. So where's all the money going?" Emma looked toward me, almost as if she suspected something, but she said nothing. That evening, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Dad, it was my bank manager, Mr. Carter. "I noticed you've stopped several long-term automatic payments." "Everything all right?" I smiled. "Yes. I've simply decided it's time the right people become responsible." He understood immediately. "I hope things work out." "So do I." 2 weeks later, the internet service was disconnected. Dad exploded. "This company is useless." He stormed outside to make phone calls. Mom quietly sat in the kitchen. She looked more heartbroken than angry. When I visited later that afternoon, she gently asked, "Jason, can I ask you something?" "Of course." She looked into my eyes. "Were you helping us?" For a moment, I couldn't speak. Then I quietly nodded. "Yes." Her eyes filled with tears. "For how long?" "Almost 3 years." She covered her mouth. "You paid the electricity?" "Yes." "The internet?" "Yes." "The taxes?" "Yes." "Dad's insurance?" I slowly nodded again. "Every month." Tears rolled down her face. "Oh, Jason, why didn't you tell us?" I smiled sadly. "Because I wasn't doing it for recognition. I was doing it because you're my family." At that exact moment, Dad walked into the kitchen. He looked at Mom, then at me. "What are you two talking about?" Mom slowly stood, still holding back tears. She looked directly at him and quietly said, "Thomas, it wasn't you." For the first time in years, my father looked completely confused. "What do you mean?" Mom took one of the overdue bills from the table, placed it in front of him, then whispered, "The person who paid all of these was Jason." Dad stared at her, then looked at me. His face slowly lost all color. He laughed nervously. "No, that's impossible." I calmly reached into my backpack, pulled out a folder, and placed it on the table. Inside were 3 years of payment confirmations, every bill, every receipt, every transaction, all under my name. Dad's hands began to shake. As he turned the first page, my father stared at the payment records, one page, then another, then another. His hands trembled with every receipt. Electricity, property taxes, internet, gas, home insurance. Even the mortgage payments during the months his business struggled. Every single payment had come from my account. The room was completely silent. Finally, Dad looked up at me. His eyes were filled with disbelief. You paid all of this," I quietly nodded, "for almost 3 years." He slowly sat down. The proud man who had always believed he carried the family suddenly looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. "But why?" I smiled sadly. "Because you're my father. I couldn't watch you lose everything." Mom began crying. I thought your father was keeping this family together." I gently replied, "He believed that too. I never wanted to embarrass him. I just wanted to help." Dad covered his face with both hands. For the first time in my life, I saw my father cry, not because of money, because he realized how badly he had misunderstood his own son. After several minutes, he stood up, walked slowly toward me. "I owe you an apology." "No, I owe you hundreds of them." His voice shook. "I called you lazy. I called you selfish. I said you contributed nothing." He couldn't continue. The words hurt him now, just as much as they had hurt me. I quietly answered, "I never wanted to prove you wrong. I only wanted our family to be okay." Dad wiped away his tears. "And I treated you like a burden." He looked around the room. Everything suddenly made sense. The lights that never went out, the bills that were always paid, the insurance that never lapsed, the home that stayed together, hadn't survived because of him alone. It had survived because his son quietly protected it. Emma hugged me tightly. "I always knew you worked hard. I just didn't know. You were carrying all of us." I smiled. "I never wanted anyone to feel guilty," she whispered. "I'm proud of you." Those 4 words meant more than she could ever imagine. Dad slowly picked up the folder again, then looked directly into my eyes. I don't deserve another chance, I answered honestly. Maybe not. The room became silent. But I don't want to spend the rest of my life hating my father. His eyes filled with tears again, so I forgive you. He broke down completely. For the first time in decades, the strongest man I knew allowed himself to be vulnerable. The following week, Dad sold one of his unused company trucks. He reduced unnecessary business expenses. For the first time, he insisted on paying every household bill himself. Not because he wanted to prove something, because he finally understood responsibility wasn't about pride. It was about gratitude. One evening, he invited me to dinner. Just the two of us. No arguments, no accusations. As we finished eating, he quietly slid an envelope across the table. I opened it. Inside was every payment I'd made over the last 3 years. Every dollar, repaid. I looked at him. I don't want this. He smiled. I know, but I need to do this. Not because you asked, because it's the first time in years. I've finally learned how to be your father again. I accepted the envelope, not because I needed the money. My business had continued growing. I was doing better than ever. I accepted it, because I knew what it represented. Respect. A month later, Dad surprised the whole family. During Emma's birthday dinner, he stood up and raised his glass. I've spent years believing I built this family by myself. He looked at me. I was wrong. My son carried this family. While I was too proud to notice, he smiled through tears. Jason, I've never been prouder to call you my son. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. Today, Dad and I still disagree sometimes. We're both stubborn. But now, we talk, we listen, and most importantly, we appreciate each other. Because we both learned a lesson we'll never forget. Sometimes, the quietest person in the room is carrying the heaviest burden. And the people who seem to take everything may actually be the ones giving the most. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes appreciation should never come too late. And always remember, never judge someone's contribution by what you can see, because the greatest sacrifices are often the ones made in silence.